Hello, everyone. Welcome on back to another episode of Auburn Anonymous. I am your host, Miles Espy. Also go by the alias of Ashton Daniels AA. I'm joined today by my co-host, Mr. Michael Espy, or as you all know him, Jackson Arnold AA. Been a couple weeks since we've been back on. I think the big news that we're here to drop on all of you is I am an SEC champion. Hey, Michael, are you an SEC champion?
Yeah, I also did it myself. I'm an SEC champion. But yeah, big week coming up. SEC tournament. Neither of us will be making the trip. We got bigger fish to fry than the SEC tournament. But I can say I'm not one of those guys who just doesn't want Auburn to win, who just wants Auburn to lose in the first round. I do want to win this SEC tournament coming up, especially coming off 2 losses. I think that would really build momentum winning the SEC tournament and getting back in the rhythm coming in before this NCAA tournament.
Yeah, I mean, look, if we're going to play in the tournament, I want to win it. But, I feel a little differently from you, but we can get to that later. But to recap the last 2 weeks of basketball, Auburn clinches, as we alluded to already, clinches the SEC regular season championship with just a blowout win at Kentucky. Honestly, I forget. I think the game before that was Arkansas. Yeah, Arkansas. We beat Arkansas in a close game. Looking really dominant in those. And you just don't see that very often. With 2 full regular season games left, it doesn't even matter what happens. Auburn is the SEC champions, and there's nothing that any other team can do to change that. What is your take from that, just how dominant Auburn's been all season?
Yeah, so we haven't filmed in 2 weeks, and yeah, that Kentucky game was probably our most impressive performance of the year, considering we haven't won there since 1988. That obviously the SEC this year has been more dominant than maybe any conference in the history of college basketball. This is obviously the first year of 16-team conferences. I know maybe the Big East has had that before, but other than that, first year for the SEC with 16 teams, and I've never seen that in my time of being an Auburn fan, but 2 games left in the SEC, already winning the SEC. So it's like, what do you do at that point? Well, I think if you look at Bruce Pearl's strategy going into that Texas A&M game, I think it was quite clear what the strategy was. Denver Jones probably could have played that game, but better safe than sorry, and sat him. Janai, I believe he played the least amount of minutes in a 15-point or closer game than he played all year in that Texas A&M game. And you saw there was like 6 minutes left. We had Ja'Kai Howard out there, Chris Moore out there, Turtle out there. So I think obviously Bruce Pearl wanted to win that game, but I think he was okay with the loss. I think he obviously wanted to win this Saturday, but I mean, it was another one of those things where, it was a blessing that Chad Baker-Mazara got that technical foul with 13 minutes because he got to rest the last 13 minutes. And at the end of the day, that game really didn't matter other than, pride and I guess the series between Bruce Pearl and Nate Oates, if that means something to you. But at Auburn, I think Bruce Pearl was really just concerned about winning championships. And, we got obviously SEC tournament and NCAA tournament coming up. But it seems like we're getting to the point where we win one of those, the tournament, or we win the regular season almost every year now, it seems like.
Yeah, it's a good feeling. I'll kind of give my take on the 2 games. A&M game is the more it makes more sense to me. But I guess before I hop into that, I do want to say, for those who've been talking to me, they know ever since we beat Kentucky, I said Auburn should just forfeit the next 2 games. I mean, we shouldn't even show up to College Station. We shouldn't. I get it, senior day against Alabama, and it's a rivalry, but we should just say screw it. We should have said from the beginning, screw it. Y'all can have the win. We don't care. We're resting our players. We're going to stay in the lab practicing, ready for the real tournament. And I'm going to go and give you a little spoiler. I wish Auburn would do that with the SEC basketball tournament. I wish Auburn would just say, we're not going to Nashville. We're not going to compete in the tournament. Whoever wins that Ole Miss, Arkansas game, whoever it is, the 8-9 game, they can just have the win against us and make it to the semifinals. I don't care whatsoever. We really don't have much to play for because the NCAA tournament committee has already, proven in the past that whoever wins a conference tournament doesn't impact seeding. Auburn's already an SEC champion, so like going and winning the tournament championship really doesn't mean a whole lot to me because we already are SEC champions. And last but not least, we've already locked in the number 1 overall seed. So I mean, why would we go and risk a player getting injured? It makes absolutely no sense. I mean, I get we probably have to, and fans paid for tickets, that kind of thing. But personally, I wish Bruce Pearl would just say, we're not going to participate in the SEC tournament. Thanks, but no thanks. Whoever wins it, good for them. But to go back quickly, the A&M game. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. The A&M game, we had, as you mentioned, Denver Jones wasn't playing. And I think we saw in that game just how important it is to have 2 real point guards playing. And I was really thinking J.P. Pegues would be getting some run with Denver out, but playing Chad Baker-Mazara at point guard, look, he's a phenomenal player. He's one of the stars of this team, but he just isn't a natural fit at point guard. And that hurt big time in that game. Then the Alabama game came around. And another thing, I guess staying on the theme of Chad Baker-Mazara, you mentioned it was good to rest him the last 13 minutes of the game, and you're right. But I think another big reason I'm happy he got kicked out, even though he probably didn't deserve it, was it kind of, hopefully, if he's not woken up about this now, if he's not awake about this, he's never going to be. Because, I mean, look, he did it. He cost us the season last year against Yale. And to have this wake-up call right before the NCAA tournament, I'm going to go and put it out there. You're going to see a point in the NCAA tournament where someone's trying to get under his skin, and he's going to want to retaliate, and he's not going to do it. You agree or disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I thought after the Yale game last year, we would probably maybe see a tech or 2 this year, but he's got to be top 10 in the country in technical fouls this year. At least in SEC play, I can remember like 4 flagrants off the top of my head. But yeah, I don't think a flagrant 2 was warranted there, and some Auburn fans may disagree with me. I don't think Grant Nelson deserved a flagrant for celebrating, even though Chad Baker-Mazara did get a flagrant 1 versus Arkansas for looking at their bench and not even saying a word. So obviously these SEC refs aren't consistent. I know it's a completely different crew, but I'd like to see some more consistency with the SEC refs. But I will say this going forward. Obviously we have the SEC tournament, but in the NCAA tournament, we're not going to have any more SEC refs at our games. And so some of these refs may, they may come from conferences where they call it more fouls or less fouls. I can't imagine there's a conference that calls more fouls than the SEC. It seems like every SEC game I watch goes 30 minutes past the time it's supposed to end at. But, Mazara, I'm not too mad about it. I'm too mad about it. Like, I'd rather just him be him. And, if he gets a flagrant every now and then, that's all right. But I think the odds of him really costing us another game because of a flagrant are super low. And even this game, we debatably almost played better without him. I'm not too worried about that going forward. That just seems to be a part of guys who come to play for Auburn. They just Bruce Pearl lets them be themselves, and they seem. I mean that him doing that leads to more technical fouls. But I trust Bruce Pearl in what he's doing, so I'm not too worried about it.
I'm with you. And then just to recap the Auburn-Alabama basketball game, I want to give you 3 facts about that Auburn-Alabama game. Fact number 1, that game meant way more to Alabama than it did to Auburn. As previously mentioned, Auburn's already locked up the number 1 overall seed. They're already SEC champions. Really didn't matter all that too much to Auburn, whereas Alabama's still jousting, trying to see if they can backdoor their way into a 1 seed. Fact number 2 about that game is if that game was officiated fairly, Auburn wins before overtime even starts. I mean, look, you had Chad get kicked out over something which probably should have been a flagrant, but I think a flagrant 1, I think flagrant 2 was a bit of a stretch. You had Chris Youngblood, who was, poking the bear all night. He never got called for any flagrants. You had, what's his name? Grant Shrimpface Nelson hit the Crimson Crane after making a dunk and getting an and 1 against Auburn. Just imagine if Chad Baker had done that and done the Crimson Crane. You and I both know he would have gotten some sort of technical. But, of course, you're Alabama, you get away with it. Not to mention, kind of going back to this, Alabama in Auburn's arena shot 7 more free throws than Auburn. I mean, you just never see that for road teams in the SEC play. In fact, number 3, another reason that Auburn lost was injuries. I mean, look, Janai Broome was not fully healthy. Denver Jones wasn't fully healthy. And Chad Baker didn't play for half the game. So, I mean, Alabama essentially won a scrimmage game against Auburn's B team. And in overtime. So, I guess congrats to the Alabama fans.
Yeah, it is kind of funny how they seem to be celebrating. They are truly celebrating this more than their Final Four. And it just shows what kind of little brother they are. They can go to a Final Four, but beating an Auburn team who's already won the SEC and didn't really care about the game is a bigger deal to you. But I mean, they need this. Their football team has Kalen DeBoer right now, and obviously that program is going downhill pretty fast. They already lost to Auburn at Coleman, so Alabama really needed this win. Because if they didn't win this, it would have been.
They may have fired Nate Oates.
Yeah.
We don't want that.
Yeah. Well, do we want to talk about? I also would like to thank the Alabama basketball program. I was pretty hungry during the game, and as me and you sit 6 rows behind that away bench, and we got you a banana on the Alabama basketball team, and I had me a couple protein waffles. And so I don't know who's in charge of that over there at Alabama basketball, but we'd like to thank you guys. We were hungry. We needed snacks during the game, and you guys provided. So that's the best thing y'all have ever done for me. I appreciate you, Alabama basketball.
Yeah, so we really appreciate that. I mean, it was really you who ate it all. We were going to the bathroom, and we were walking by the Alabama bench, and we just see a banana and like a Rice Krispie treat and a protein bar, protein wafers, and some other stuff on there. We were just like, can we just take this? Like, it'd be funny. So, sure enough, we did. And again, we appreciate it to the Alabama managers or whoever it was who left that nice, assortment of snacks out for us. It was very kind of you. We appreciate it. So I guess now that we've recapped the rest of the regular season, you want to pivot on over to the tournament, SEC tournament?
Yeah, let's do it. As I said, go ahead.
Go first. No, you go. You go.
As I was saying, I do care about this SEC tournament. It would be nice to win the regular season and the SEC tournament, and I think this sets up very nicely for Auburn to do so. Just looking at it from an Auburn perspective, we play the winner, I believe, of Ole Miss and Arkansas. Is that right?
I mean, if you want to include South Carolina in that, I wouldn't. But, South Carolina plays Arkansas. Arkansas should win. They play Ole Miss.
Point of it, Auburn's a nightmare matchup for all 3 of those teams.
100%.
So Auburn's basically already in the semifinals, unless they really just decide to throw that game, which I know in Bruce Pearl, he's going to try to win this thing. And so now we're already in the semifinals. And I'm not exactly sure who Texas A&M plays the winner of, but I can't imagine we're going to be playing a team that's not Texas A&M or Tennessee. Me personally, I'd like to see Texas A&M again, especially with a Denver Jones. But I think, honestly, both of those matchups set up nice for Auburn. Those are 2 teams that rely on their defense and aren't great shooting teams. And I think both of them saw Auburn in their lowest 5 3-point percentage games in SEC play. So I think that would match up favorably for Auburn. I think we'll probably beat the winner of that. And then who knows who will play in the SEC championship. I would have to guess the Florida Gators are playing the best basketball right now. But, I mean, you never know in these neutral site games. Florida went down to the wire with North Carolina in the non-conference. They lost to Georgia, obviously. So we could end up seeing someone else. But I would be very shocked if we don't see Auburn playing on Sunday, if anything.
Yeah, so again, there's 3 options to this, right? There's 3, and I guess in my world, there's 3 scenarios. There's Auburn, and again, this first one isn't even a real scenario, but the first scenario is Auburn just declines to go to the SEC tournament. That would be my preferred number 1 option, just decline to go. Option number 2 is we go win the whole thing. That would be my second favorable option. That's what I'd want the second most. Then last would be just to lose. I don't want to. If we're going to go, I want to win. Again, I wish we wouldn't go, but if we're going to go, I want to win. And I feel very similar to you. Ole Miss versus Arkansas. Arkansas might scare me just a smidge. You know, they played us tight in Auburn Arena or Neville. I'm gonna call it Auburn Arena forever. But in Neville Arena, Ole Miss. I mean, they're a joke. We'd smack them. Then we're probably getting A&M or Tennessee. I think I'm with you. I mean, you kind of hit the nail on the head. They're both kind of defensive first teams. A&M, I think A&M's a little better than Tennessee, and they would scare me more. But the fact that they just beat us like a week ago, I just don't think our guys are going to allow them to do it again. Tennessee, they're a good team. Problem is offense. I mean, they had to do what they did to us the first time, where they're not going to score points, but they can stop us from scoring points. But they did that to us the first time, and they still lost. So I don't think Tennessee is capable of beating Auburn, to be quite frank with you. Because I think we got their best shot the first time, and they still couldn't beat us. Looking at the other side of the bracket, I mean, the short list of teams who I think have a chance of making it to that championship game. Of course, you got Florida and Alabama. Outside of that, I mean, there's Kentucky. I don't see Kentucky doing it. Missouri, I think Missouri's capable. I think the winner of Missouri versus Mississippi State could beat Florida and could make a run to the SEC championship. But I'll kind of stick with, even though I would say those are kind of the tier 2 teams, the first tier of teams on that side of the bracket would have to be Florida and Alabama. And I think either one of those would be a dream matchup for Auburn in the SEC championship. First off, you have Florida. Florida is Auburn's only real loss in the SEC regular season. Florida is the only team that beat Auburn when Auburn actually had something on the line when they played them. So there's going to be a whole lot of pride if Auburn were to play Florida in the SEC championship. Then there's Alabama, who of course just beat Auburn in a completely meaningless game. But you saw the Alabama players and even Nate Oates just absolutely have a great time trying to troll the Auburn students and the Auburn players with, constantly like they had something to prove. Like they constantly hitting the Crimson Crane. For a big brother, they sure have a lot to prove, it feels like, to prove to us. But the point being is both of those teams, Auburn's going to be super motivated to play. So even though I wish Auburn would decline the invitation to the SEC tournament, I have Auburn winning it. Surprise, surprise.
I mean, yeah, I think it's going to be Auburn or Florida most likely. We saw Florida, what they did to Alabama at Alabama this past week wasn't even close. So yeah, that'll be a good game if it comes to it, but it's exciting. I know me and you are going to watch most of the SEC tournament. I know maybe 10 years ago, me and you went to every single SEC tournament game. Back when Auburn wasn't very good, Alex Caruso was at Texas A&M and took us out in the play-in day. So I would love to get back to a spot one day where we could do that again.
Yeah.
With the way this is trending, the way this show's been trending, we'll probably be able to be doing this full time by next year. So I imagine we'll be there next year, and
You're probably in the media box. You're probably
exactly. We might be on ESPN by then. So
But I'm sorry to steal your spot. I'm going to quickly just say some people accuse us of being basketball fans for like 2 years. Granted, we were kids at the time, so we didn't go out and buy the tickets or anything. But we Tony Barbee guaranteed a 20 win season. And so our dad went up and scooped SEC basketball tickets, and he was like, it's kind of just like a bucket list thing. Always wanted to do it. And, we got bounced in like the very first game of the tournament. but it was cool to go to every single game. We got to saw Marshall Henderson. He's a big Auburn fan, if y'all don't remember. Big Auburn fan. He went and he led Ole Miss to the championship. It was a pretty epic tournament.
Yeah, I remember we were playing video games at that time with Marshall Henderson's brother. But yeah, I met a bunch of different people throughout the SEC. It was a neat event. At that time, it was mostly Kentucky. There was probably more Kentucky fans than all the other fan bases combined. And, it's crazy how times change, because I think Auburn might be the best traveling fan base in the SEC now. And so I wouldn't be surprised if Auburn had the most fans this weekend, if you added up at the SEC weekend. But I don't know what's going on behind me there.
Yeah, I was gonna say first of all, I can remember we were in there in the SEC Fan Fest, and we were playing a game, and a kid with an Ole Miss shirt came up to us and said, "Auburn fans, you guys must hate my brother." And I was like, "Yeah, I remember that. That was cool." And also going to what you said, I think there's a very real chance. Let's say Auburn, this game, the SEC tournament's in Nashville. I think there's a very real chance, despite the SEC tournament being in Nashville, when Auburn and Tennessee play in the semifinals, there's more orange and blue in that arena than Tennessee orange. And it takes a lot for me to say, because I can remember being in 2019, I attended the SEC championship, the SEC tournament championship, where Auburn just absolutely demolished Tennessee, and it was maybe 5 to 10% Auburn fans. But this year it won't be that way.
No, not at all. Obviously, we were at the Auburn Duke game, and it was, other than the students, it may have been more Auburn fans than Duke fans there. And that's not even being sarcastic. I'm just not counting the students. At least 50-50. It was crazy how that game went. But, yeah, one of my friends who goes to Ole Miss texted me. He's like, "You got to be at the tournament this weekend." And, no, I'm not, because, we got to save our PTO time and, the time we can take off work for the Sweet 16 and the Final Four. We can't just leave every weekend. So, won't be able to make it this weekend. No.
Yeah, no, we have a Final Four to make. We have a Final Four, and also we're going to the Auburn-Baylor game for football. Speaking of, I don't think we had much football we were going to talk about today, but Auburn versus Baylor got moved to Friday evening. That has been a very, controversial thing. It seems that a lot of Auburn fans are upset about it. I don't understand why. I love it.
Yeah, it makes no sense, because the first weekend is stacked with games if you look at it. And we were going to be playing at the same time as, some of these other games, when the whole nation wasn't going to be watching Auburn-Baylor. The whole country is going to be watching Auburn versus Baylor. Now, this is huge that they moved it to Friday. I completely understand why we did it. I'm sure that was part of the reasoning of, the other games going on and having the opportunity for the whole nation to be watching this game. But we will be in attendance for the Auburn-Baylor game. From what I've been hearing about this football team, spring practice starts this week, but man, from what I've been hearing, this team's going to be the best we've seen in a very long time, and I'm talking about since 2013 or 2010 good.
Yeah, I'm unbelievably excited. I think this is a playoff football team. I do, moving it to Friday night. I mean, just think about it. Put it in. Let's just say, not an SEC fan. Let's just say you're a Michigan Wolverine fan, okay? But you like college football in general. It's Saturday going on. There's Ohio State versus Texas. You have Clemson versus LSU. If you're just flipping around on TV, you're not going to stick. You're not going to click on Auburn-Baylor, and it's not going to stick. That's not going to be the game that you're like, oh yeah, this is the one I want to watch as a casual college football fan. But on a Friday night, a Michigan fan, a Nebraska fan, a Oregon fan, you name it, any casual college football game or any casual college football fan is going to be watching. And they're going to watch and see all the talent Auburn has at wide receiver, the way the offensive line's beefed up, the way we have a 5-star quarterback who will be in the Heisman contention. They're going to see us just pick apart a Baylor team that's pretty dang good in their own right on the road. But we're going to make a statement week 1.
I'll go ahead and say this right now so it's on the record. We might be in the preseason top 25. We might not. But I 100% guarantee you, after the Auburn-Baylor game, week 2, we'll be in the top 25 for the first time in a very long time. You look at this team. At quarterback, you have 2 5-star quarterbacks. Jackson Arnold, who's a proven SEC quarterback, beat Alabama by 21. You got Deuce Knight, who everyone on campus is saying he looks 10 times better than expected. He's ready to be a year 1 starter if he needs to be. You look at the wide receiver room. Perry Thompson, Cam Coleman, Eric Singleton, and Malcolm Simmons. I don't think there's a group of 4 better receivers in the country than that. On 3, the top 10 receivers in the nation. We were the only team to have 2 receivers in the top 6 in the whole country. You look at the running back room, Damari Alston and Jeremiah Cobb. Obviously, they've never had the starting role, but they're proven running backs who clearly can get the job done. Add that in with Alvin Henderson and Darrell Robinson, who rushed for 700 yards as a freshman at UConn this past year. And then you look at the offensive line. 86% of production from last year returning. That 14% being Percy Lewis that isn't returning. And I think all Auburn fans can say that that'll only benefit us. We had the top 2 tackles in the transfer portal. I mean, this offense is going to be insane. Obviously, we got some studs on defense like Keldrick Faulk, Kayan Lee, the whole DB room. Got something to prove at linebacker, but I'm telling you now, this offense, I believe it's going to be the best in the SEC this upcoming year.
Yep, I am ready to get hurt again because I fully believe this is a playoff team. Honestly, I think we have multiple players on our team that could win the Heisman this year. We just got to see how the season plays out. So very exciting stuff. Any recruiting updates this week, or just kind of same old, same old?
Yeah, no, it's kind of a slow period in recruiting right now. There was a ton of big time recruits at the game this past weekend that were having fun. We'll start to talk about 2026 recruiting more after basketball's over. But, we got the spring portal coming up. I really don't expect Auburn to be too active in that. I think we're going to see less players enter the spring portal this year. I think that's why you're seeing a lot of these people not even have spring games and stuff like that, because they don't even want these guys to know if they're starters or backups heading into the offseason, because they'll just transfer. And so I really don't think we're going to see too many guys that leave the Auburn program. And if anyone leaves the Auburn program, it's not going to be guys that we care about. And we're just not in a position like last year where we needed to add a Keandre Lambert in the spring. We got everything we need on offense and defense. I mean, we could maybe add a linebacker, but no one who's gonna make a huge impact on the team next year. I just don't see that happening. So I don't think the portal news will be too interesting. I think as far as recruiting goes, what's going to be very interesting coming up, what Auburn fans have to look forward to, is the transfer portal for basketball. It's going to be interesting because Auburn's got 3 guys. We know Chad Baker can come back. We know Denver Jones might be able to come back, and we know Chaney might be able to come back. But they might tell those 2 no, that they can't come back. I believe they're all going to have eligibility, but there's a chance they're not. And even if they do have the eligibility to come back, what I'm hearing is that they all want to enter the draft and with an agent. So Auburn is going to be kind of in a tough spot, not knowing exactly what they need to add to their roster for a little bit, because they're going to have guys, in my opinion, like Tahad Pettiford for one. Like, he's going to enter the draft, but he's going to maintain his college eligibility. We all think he's going to come back to Auburn. So we're not going to be out there recruiting a point guard. But if he does end up going, we're going to be kind of in a tough spot. But we got 4 guys locked in for next year's roster for sure. I think Tahad's almost 100% coming back. And I think going into the offseason, our main thing is going to be going and finding the top center that we can in the portal. I'm not exactly sure who that would be. I need to – maybe next podcast we'll have a list of guys that could potentially be, because it seems like this season half the players in college basketball are seniors. And so I think next year it's just going to be a whole new group of guys that are leading the country in scoring, as this year kind of feels like it's just been the same guys as last year that are the top players in the nation other than Cooper Flagg.
Yeah. So I will briefly say, I don't know who the big man would be, who we'd bring in. That's definitely, I think, after basketball season, that would make a great podcast. Look at the transfer portal targets and that kind of thing. And you have a lot of intel when it comes to that and sources within the program. So we can provide a lot of value on that. I will say, of course, outside of the Bashir twins, a name that I've heard popped up a few times, and this is not a big man, it's a guard. If, let's say, Tahad were to go or whatever, Jakari Lane over at North Alabama. North Alabama is quietly, I don't know, hadn't heard really ever all that much about their basketball program, but they've had a really good year over there, and he's been a really good point guard that Bruce saw firsthand in North Alabama. So when they came into Auburn Arena. So I think that's a name that has some buzz if Todd were to leave, but I'd much rather have Tahad. There's no doubt about it. One other thing that we need to discuss is, again, there was a very big ball game in Alabama this past week. Auburn played UAB at baseball, and so and you and I both went to it. Unfortunately, Auburn lost. in a walk-off in a game we shouldn't have lost. And Auburn, quite frankly, baseball has been a little disappointing to me lately as well. Overall, it's been a good season. But that was a disappointing loss, and I think we just started our final game in the series against Old Dominion. Did you see what happened in that game last night, Michael?
No, I wasn't paying attention to sports. I did watch the UFC last night, but other than that, I wasn't paying attention to Auburn baseball last night.
Well, yeah, I wasn't really in the mood to watch it either. So a lot of the games I've been watching. Most of them I've been watching, but last night I just wasn't in the mood, to be watching sports. Even though the game that kind of had me down a little bit, I didn't care about. That game, I saw where Auburn was winning 9-2, 6 innings through the game. And okay, Auburn won the first game. Like, okay, we got this. Let's go for the sweep tomorrow. I'm scrolling on Twitter an hour or two later. Auburn loses 11-9 to a 3-8 Old Dominion baseball team. So that was disappointing, but hopefully we win the series today. I mean, that kind of stuff is just going to happen. You're gonna lose some baseball games, and some games you shouldn't lose. But
do you know?
Sorry.
if we're competitive in NIL for baseball? I feel like schools like Tennessee, I feel like they care more than Auburn, Mississippi State, Ole Miss. I could be wrong, but I feel like they spend more money on their baseball. And I was just curious
that
if you knew
is
that.
probably true. I don't know. The reason I say that is if you just look at attendance. Like Mississippi State draws larger crowds, LSU draws larger crowds. I think Tennessee does too. But if you go and look at the average attendance of an Auburn or Alabama baseball game, it's much smaller. But I do kind of have to. I hate to do this. I do have to give a bit of a hat tip to Alabama, because Alabama, the crowds they draw are similar to Auburn. They're good crowds, but there's some of the SEC schools like Ole Miss and Mississippi State draw way bigger ones. Alabama's undefeated this year despite all that. So I still think we can overcome that. Then the other thing I'm going to throw out there, and it's a segue into what I was about to say about our first series this weekend that I'm very excited about against Vanderbilt. I know Vanderbilt's historically been able to give out more scholarships than other SEC schools, and that's been a part of why they've been so dominant lately. But I'm very excited for the series against Vanderbilt. I think we got a good shot at winning it. If things don't go well, we can go find that Vandy Whistler at the game and go throw some hands with him, like Ben Mintz did.
Yeah, I might check out the SEC tournament, being that it's in Birmingham this year. If we're even in the SEC tournament, so.
Yeah, that's right. So you and I didn't go this past year, but I moved to Birmingham 2 years ago. I lived in Coleman for 3 years before that, and I'd gone down and watched Auburn once play in the SEC baseball tournament when I was in Coleman. But then when I moved here, I was like, I know I haven't been a huge baseball guy, but like SEC tournaments, 5 minutes away, why not go check it out? And it's really one of the coolest events out there. It's up there with the SEC basketball tournament, in my opinion. And baseball has always been one of those sports that it's cool to watch on TV, but it's always 100 times cooler to see in person. So to see all the teams there, all the fans there, and all the, I remember once I went to go watch Auburn play in a late night game, I forget, against 2, and I saw Alabama was playing Florida in the game before, and Florida was the top team in the SEC. Alabama was, they were good, but they were maybe like the 4 seed. I don't know. Maybe the 8 seed. I don't know. Regardless, Alabama was leading, and Florida hit a walk-off grand slam, and it was pretty epic. But it's fun. We got to go check it out this year, if Auburn's in it.
Yeah, you're the baseball guy on this show, though, so I'm not going to sit here and try to act like I know too much. It was fun going to that game the other night, though. But yeah, I'm pretty optimistic, obviously, about Auburn football and Auburn basketball. But from the little I've watched from Auburn baseball, I haven't been too optimistic. I know that was the last non-conference series of the season versus Old Dominion, our weekend series of the season. I'm not sure do you know who we have this upcoming weekend?
So I was just saying we have Vanderbilt.
Sorry, my bad.
You're good. We have Old Dominion right now. We're playing them. I think we just started. Let's see if we've taken a lead yet. That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was actually gonna let you do it.
Oh, that's what you're pulling up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
So it is 0-0 top of the second. What you gonna do?
Yeah, that's what I was checking.
Hopefully we pull through. If we do, I'll be pretty disappointed. But do You have anything else you want to talk about before we wrap up, or any other topics?
No, we got a big show coming up next week. We're gonna do a reaction show after the March Madness bracket has been released. We'll have our Final Fours. We might actually start having some the basketball portal news because all the teams that didn't make the tournament are gonna have their guys in the portal for the most part. And if you don't believe Bruce Pearl and them are going to be recruiting while the tournament's going, you're wrong. I've heard stories of them sending assistants while the tournament's going to towns to meet with recruits. So we're going to have portal news going. We're going to have reactions to the tournament. We're going to have unbiased predictions for how we think Auburn's going to do. And surely we won't get a bad beat in the tournament this year. We won't just get an absolutely stacked bracket. They never do that to Auburn. So
yeah, no, we're totally not going to be going up against UConn as the 8 seed and Gonzaga as the 9 seed.
Yeah,
not going to happen.
It's going to be UConn versus Gonzaga. The 2 seed will be Houston, and who knows?
Yeah, we're not going to get screwed. Well, hey, you saying that actually reminded me. I have one other thing I wanted to mention was next week we are going to be recording, as you mentioned. We are going to be recording. Once the bracket's released, a podcast with our good friends over at the Plainsman Perspective. I've heard from all the away fans, all the other SEC fans, that Auburn Anonymous and the Plainsman Perspective are the 2 Auburn voices that they fear the most. So we're uniting. We're going to come out with a collaboration video with our take on the NCAA tournament, giving our predictions, thoughts, and where we think Auburn's going to go. So we're very excited to partner up with those guys to put together some great content.
Yeah, I'm excited to do that. I'm excited for the bracket. I think we'll be, not only are we SEC tournament, we're SEC champions right now. I think me and you will be an SEC tournament champion by the end of this weekend, and I'm hoping me and you will end up being national champions by the end of the year. So.
Oh yeah, I think you and I will both be national champions, but. For now, that's it. Next time you hear from us, we will be twice SEC champions. But for now, we're out of here. I'm Ashton Daniels, AA. That's Jackson Arnold, AA. We're Auburn Anonymous, and we're out.